Hello, everyone, and welcome to Single No More. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm your host. We are here to give you the tools to feel confident that you can meet and keep your Mr. Right this year. I'm so happy to see you. My guest today is Kevin O'Connor. He is the founder of Practical Masculinity. He's the father of 2 children, a lifelong athlete, a man who was married for 30 years, now a single man, a lifelong entrepreneur, and a man on a mission. He recently launched this initiative called Practical Masculinity to provide support, guidance, and a healthy masculine perspective for men who may be struggling with understanding their role in society and how to show up in a positive and constructive way in their relationships. And I want to welcome today. Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing? Pleasure to be here.
I'm sure this is music to everyone's ears because then the women are now saying, great, finally the men are going to get some help. Even though we're preaching to say, don't worry about them. It's all within you. You can do it without having to change the men. But we do appreciate what you're doing because, you know, I agree times are changing and, you know, it's the more the women and the men can be helped, the better. I think it's just going to make for happy, healthier relationships. So tell us, what is practical masculinity?
Well, maybe I should describe what it isn't. So it's really not this esoteric, conceptual, psychobabbly way of being able to say to men, hey, these are all of the things you need to be able to do to show up in your life and to, to be a better partner. What I found was that there was really no resource that provided straight talk and guidance to men around sort of simple things about what it's like to be a man today and what we need to be able to be focused on and how to show up in a relationship. So I guess if I had a bias, I would say, you know, there was no real dude talk. There was no focus on speaking to men in a way that resonated with them, that they had landed for them. They would be like, they'd be seeing a bedside book be put beside the bed by their partner. And, oh, I guess I'm supposed to read this or something. We should watch this Netflix little video, and it's like, well, I recognize there's some things I could probably focus on, but like maybe it's not necessarily presented in a way that my partner thinks it should be presented. It's just maybe something that could be presented to me in a way that, you know, sort of lands for me. So it's really based on my life, and I call these sort of life hack stories, guides. It's like a manual. It's like, this is how I do it yourself renovation and do it yourself guide to relationship renovation and upgrade, you know, written in a way that guys get it.
Great. Yeah. I can only imagine that this would have come from the experience that you've gone through in your own journey in life and love. And like you said, you were married for, was it 13 years?
No. 30 years.
30 years. Yeah. I read that, and then I literally was like, is that real? Because that is incredible. That's why I was like, did I get that right? 30 years.
I say that I was a remarkably exceptional, high-performing average husband. So if we put a whole bunch of average men together, I would be, there's the best of the average guys. So, and as I got older and as I have begun this new part of my life, my focus is really on being exceptional in relationship, not being average. And average comes easy to men. And I don't mean that as a downer. Average with respect to relationship. It's typically not a primary focus of what we think about during the day. It is something that is a part of our lives, maybe something that we long for, but it isn't central to our being, and that's for marriages, and that's sometimes in the world of dating. And so I sort of wanted to, in sort of new age jargony way, level up a little bit and sort of step into a place where I was, you know, exceptional at it. And
so what was the key indicator that you described yourself as just average? Why did you see yourself that way?
Well, I think average effort gets average results. I mean, it's not like, wow, I really worked hard and I just came up short. I think that men in relationship are inclined to be, to underperform. And I think it's because that we don't really know what's on the other side. We won't climb the mountain because we don't know what's on the other side of the mountain. We don't really appreciate that with minimal investment in the right way, we can get these great returns. And men are very outcome oriented. So if you ask a guy, I often ask my male clients, can you tell me something that you do really well now that you didn't do as well when you were first married? Oh, I can rebuild, and I rebuild a 66 Corvette engine. I'm an incredible golfer. I play poker like nobody else. And you say, how did you get there? I said, I put a lot of time and energy. I read books. I watched television shows. I'm just really, I put my mind and heart to it. And I say, well, tell me about all of the things that you've done to improve your connection, your intimacy, and your lovemaking in your relationship, and how that got better. And they'll look at me like, got better. I mean, I was always pretty good. I was always a bit of a stud. Everything works well in my relationship. So there's a disconnect between all of the things that are important in our lives. We invest time and energy, but the things that aren't top of mind, that aren't prevalent, they sort of aren't a priority for us, we don't put the energy. And that's sort of how relationships often for men go. I think that for men, the peak years of relationship are the courtship year or two, and then the year after. And then they sort of like, yes, everything's perfect. I've done it. And then their focus often goes to career or lifestyle or family and things like that, but not necessarily on relationship. So I think that the results of my marriage were indicative of the effort and focus that I placed on it.
Interesting. And I think what I'm hearing about you a lot is that you were very proactive. You realized, hey, I'm average. I could be better. What can I do to be better? And I think from a woman's perspective, we all, we have no control over men and what they do and how much they want to learn. Or like you said, it could be really good in the first 2-3 years. And then all of a sudden, the relationship isn't the focus. Is there anything you can advise women, to help this guy, or is there anything that we can do, or is it something we can be aware of when spotting this kind of gentleman in the beginning? Is there anything we can do, not really knowing if a guy is someone who, wants to always kind of seek help or not, or what are those kind of key things to look for?
Well, the number one question I suggest to women is to ask a guy is, tell me a little bit about your last relationship. What do you think led to the breakdown or the breakup? Mm-hmm. What part of that do you take responsibility for? And what have you done since in your life to ensure that that doesn't occur in your next relationship?
I like it. That's good.
Now, typically it will be, well, we sort of grew apart, or we weren't the right fit, or things happened, or there was some infidelity, or I made some mistakes in my life. It's okay. What part do you take responsibility for? That's sometimes a big struggle. Even if your partner cheated and you felt betrayed and left the relationship, there was still something in that relationship. I'm not suggesting you accept blame for it, but you can take responsibility. There was something that you missed providing or supporting, or there was a way in which you didn't show up that might have created more of an opening. But at least you reflect on that and say, I could have been more mindful. I could have been more attention. I could have been less, I was really spending a lot of time at work, or whatever element of that breakdown that you think you can take responsibility for. Then it's next. And so what have you done, or what are you doing to ensure that doesn't show up in your next relationship? If they can't answer any of those questions, I would suggest that they're not ready to go on a date with you. Now, it means you have to do the same thing yourself.
Yeah, that's a great point. We ask those questions, but like you said, if we can't maybe answer those ourselves, like you said, maybe it's just admitting to yourself, maybe I'm not ready. And I love your point about responsibility, because what I've learned about taking responsibility is that it's the opposite of then blaming, and blaming in anything is very disempowering and never good. So I love that. Now, you and I talked about this the other day, and you were saying that when you came out of your marriage of 30 years, incredible, that you were essentially, you called yourself a serial dater, and you had this journey, which I would love you to talk about, going from saying you were a serial dater to a serial relator, which I just love. So I just want to hear more about this. Please share that.
Well, first of all, I think it's important for people to be really honest about why they're dating. I think women have more of an ability, an inherent ability to reflect and develop insight. I think men cope in a way that allows them to compartmentalize their feelings and focus outward on achievement and outcomes. And so we're not as inclined to reflect and ponder on, gee, why am I dating? So it's somewhat of an impulsive thing, reactive. It's like, I think I should be dating, therefore I should be dating. I find women attractive. And so what I'll do is I'll put myself out there. I want to tell you the first time that I went online, because, online dating was a brand new experience for me. So I have a son in his late 20s. At that time, he was in his early 20s. And he said, Dad, I think you should probably go on Tinder. I said, well, what's that all about? He said, you put this, you put your profile together and you help me with the profile. And so I put my profile up, and it was just after Christmas about 5 years ago. And, I did a little swiping. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. And then I got a match. And I was like, oh, I matched up. And he left. And I was thinking, all right, I read the person's profile. I read my profile. It's okay. So I responded. A little later in the evening, he comes back and I said, son, I'm kind of discouraged. He said, what is it, Dad? I said, well, I got a match. And I wrote back, and there's been nothing since. And he said, well, do you mind if I see what you wrote? And so he opened up my phone, and he read, and he read, and he read, and he read. He said, Dad, you just wrote 2 pages. This, you don't know the person. You haven't been introduced to them.
Right.
There's definitely you are definitely leave an impression for that person. And I'm thinking like, oh, it's like the conversation really hasn't begun yet. But so lovely to meet you. Look, and I'm sure the person on the other thoughts, this is one kind of sad guy. He's like, wow. What's the next conversation going to look like with him? He just wrote 2 pages. So I did need to get a little coaching in terms of how to approach, and I became good at it. And I think dating for me was, and I think dating for a lot of people in the beginning, is about a personal journey of healing and self-discovery. And unfortunately, we enlist other people in that process that may have a different objective when it comes to dating. So a man will begin to date, or in my case, I began to date, and I know it was to get some affirmation, some confirmation, some feedback that I was charming and entertaining and engaging. And I think that was my way of filling myself up, but my way of getting to a place where it's like, yeah, I'm okay. I've got my mojo back. And then it was like my medicine. It was a little dose of medicine. Have a date, have a conversation. It's like, I'm feeling good. I've had my dating supplement. Now, you forget that there's another person who had a great date with you that started thinking like, so what's next? And men typically do this at the end. They typically say, perhaps we should do this again. It was a positive experience, without really thinking it through, without being comfortable with pondering on whether it is something they want to do. So I did that enough that I realized that, there was supplementation and there was sort of disregard. And I probably didn't have enough regard for that person. I don't think they signed up to be part of my healing journey. It wasn't like, let's go out tonight so I can feel good about myself. Can you do that? Because I'll pay for dinner. We'll talk. I'll be really engaging. I'll practice my conversational skills. I'll pull you in. I'm really curious about you. And it's like, yes, I still have it. This was a very positive experience. And what lingers is that, was I fully in integrity in that evening? Why was I there? And for me to switch from serial dater to serial relator was really about being upfront and honest about my intentions. And so I had to come up in my mind. I came up with this framework, which I call the 4 C's of dating. And I talk about it. And if they don't align with the other person's view of dating and what they want out of the date, we probably shouldn't go out. So for me, I like to think about things in terms of an organic, flowing way. So the 4 C's are, and I've added a 5th C. And for your listeners and viewers, the fifth C, small c, is confirmation, because I can't get to the first one without the confirmation. And
your video is, did we lose you? I think you might have dropped out. This is a first. We'll see if he dials back in here. I'll leave it going for a moment. Yeah, I'm super excited to hear about the 4 C's, which he was talking about. And what was I thinking when he was saying all the serial data? I think the interesting thing about that is that, hello, welcome back.
I just lost you there.
Yeah, that was a first, and I was like, I'm just going to hang here and hope that you dial back in. So I was just trying to say to the audience while you're away was that I loved how you were describing your serial dating days, because you were able to almost admit that you were going out essentially just for your own validation, your own confirmation, and just getting a little dose of ego boost, if you will. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's more just I'm saying for the women, just be aware that some people just want to go out either for that or to have fun. So the best thing to do is go meet someone, see what happens. Worst case scenario, you get a good friend out of it, and you gauge where they're at. And they might just, I'm sure you were super polite and you were probably very charismatic and charming, and I'm sure a lot of women fell for you. But you technically just weren't in the right time, but you definitely appeared like you would have been in the right kind of set, and I'm sure a woman would have. So it's more just the main thing of be aware that everyone else is going on their own journey, and the main thing to really realize is, are you guys on the same page at the same time? But hey, you got to go out and start dating to find out. So I was just kind of giving my thoughts on what you were saying, which I think was just super interesting, because I think we always think that everyone that we show up to a date with is the one, ultimately ready, on the same page as us, wants this, no, we just need to kind of work it out. And, I'm sure I went out and just got an ego boost and did the same thing. So, hey, we all probably do it.
So I think the concept of the ego boost is more, it was more, less of ego and more self-serving. And I think that in my case, at least, I was authentic. I was showing up. I was generally.
Yeah, I believe you would have been totally present. Yeah.
But it was the residual of that experience that was enough for me, and that I realized that I had a hard, and I did have a hard time, and I still to this day have a hard time moving from the initial connection and the conversation, engaging, to really determining whether or not where the flow is in terms of relationship. And that's now my dating profiles. I start off with friendship. And I really do believe you start off with friendship. And I think there's at least three kinds of dating guys out there. I mean, there are the players, and these are the ones that essentially this is an opportunity for them to work through a large list of potential partners so that they can have some intimacy and some fun. And their primary quest is to conquer and to have sexual interaction with somebody, and they will start and swipe and write and whatever, and they will work down that list. And it's a very measured process. There will be some inappropriate language, some testing of things, and the next thing you know, they will find out, who the person is that's probably the best candidate, and then they'll go to, they'll work through their short list. And I think women are pretty good now at being able to figure out where the players are, the guys are big, and most women have something in their profile they're not interested in hooking up. There are the men who are going definitely because they're seeking counsel about their heartbreak. So these men that will spend 30 to 40 to 50 minutes talking about a previous relationship and how upsetting it was, or how kind of struggling, and they'll talk through what's going on with their kids, and they're really there for therapy, and they want a compassionate, empathetic listener, and they want something. They're there. They don't. It's not an intentional. And these things are not like.
I believe. Yeah.
There's the, I will call, the lonely man, and the lonely man just needs to get out more. And so this is like, I am void of feeling good about things. I'm having to have a date to have company. And this is the guy that goes out and dates you. And then the date, sometimes he seems slightly disconnected. He's sort of content to be out with somebody, but there's no real output. He won't ask you any questions, but it's like, yes, I'm with somebody, there's somebody driving next to me. I'm sitting across, I'm not eating alone tonight. And then there are people who actually are interested in having a relationship and being, moving along. So earlier on, I talked about these 5 C's, these 4 C's.
Yeah.
Small C, the first one is confirmation, because there's that world of catfishing. And I have had a number of experiences where clearly the person I ended up connecting with, at least by texting, was not the person in the photos. And I have I can write a book on how to protect yourself in terms of making sure that the person that you're dealing with really is that real person, because you can manufacture almost anything online. So I always suggest to my clients, soon as you can, you get the last name. You don't give out your phone number. As soon as you can, you find a LinkedIn profile, ask if they're on social media. Even if they don't invite you to be a friend, you can see a little bit about them. Talk a little bit about, their education, things like that. So that you get a feel for the person. And those are harder things for people to be able to manufacture.
Okay, cool. I like that advice.
The first one, I don't know if it's showing up this way or this way, is conversation. Yeah. And I think conversations in themselves have their own life. And I suggest that people move into conversation as soon as possible. And for me, that's getting off of texting, and that's actually picking up the phone and calling somebody.
And this is still prior to meeting in person, so confirmation.
I would never meet somebody in person without having a voice conversation. You can tell so much about a person from their voice, from the flow, the choice of language, words. You can tell whether or not they get you.
Yeah.
And you can tell there's lots of things, and there's so much nuance in voice.
Yeah, I feel like this is a reoccurring kind of tip that I keep hearing again, is just this kind of early stage vetting that you can do. So that way, when you're meeting out on a date, you're kind of feeling more comfortable, and it's almost like you're less likely to be disappointed. And that's not only going to save you time, but also probably, save you the annoyance of thinking that, oh, I don't choose the right man, or I'm not good at this, and potentially beating yourself up about it. So, make it a more enjoyable experience, because if it's good, it's not bad. And the bad can sometimes, hurt us and set us, just make us frustrated, which can be annoying.
You also want to be able to see that, have a conversation with that person. For me, conversation is almost everything. There's lots of things you can do, but how much of your is passionate time, and how much of it is engaging and having a conversation. With the next one, and I'm just going to cough here. Getting cold. The next one is connection. So with connection, we're talking about that sort of energetic exchange. You're talking to somebody, there's laughter, they get you, there's humor, there's a little flirtation. Wow. So that's a second C, connection. Those two you can actually establish without meeting somebody. The third one you can't, and the third one is chemistry. And I would recommend you don't have 10 phone calls and get really good connection and conversation, because you can find that in that first meeting there's absolutely no chemistry, and there is a sense of obligation that we know each other, we should be spending time with each other, we spend so much time talking on the phone, but there really isn't any chemistry. So we got to get to the chemistry. And then down the road, if things work out, you've got commitment, and you've got some exclusivity. That's somebody's, that's your girl, that's your woman, your man, your partner, and then you go there. So I tend to look at those as episodes in a Netflix series. Each one has to have a beginning and ending, and each one on its own can stand on its own. So
yeah.
I came up with that because I felt so often on a date I was being interviewed for the final episode.
Yeah.
We're planning the final episode, and it's like, well, we haven't really got into,
Right.
it's like, where's this series? Is it a five season series? Is it 10 seasons? It's like, we're in the first episode. So the conversation in itself can be positive. And
Well, like that really long text that you had on Tinder, it's almost like, it was the same thing. A woman, if you're all cutting to the chase without going through that process, you felt you felt put off from what you were just saying. I'm sure this woman on the other side of Tinder felt put off because she's like, whoa, he's all in. He hasn't even spoken to me yet. So you can see how it's a really nice framework to follow that just is small step at each time and just tick the box. And then therefore you'll move along the process. And then therefore you're not feeling like you made this huge commitment. And then therefore you lost something. Because that same thing of like, we all feel horrible if we, how do you lose something you never had, but we felt like we did. So this is where I really like your framework to kind of go along, and it feels like, oh, okay, I didn't invest a ton without, knowing. And that's just what it is these days, especially with online dating. It's a great framework. I like it. Yeah, perfect.
So it works for me, and I declare it in advance. And it comes back to your point earlier, Andrea, where you said, if you are aligned with expectations about the date or where you're at in your lives, you're going to be able to navigate through the little hiccups of courtship. If somebody's in one place and you're in a completely different place, then you're not going to have a great date.
I like it. I also want to talk about, and you and I have spoken about this before, masculine and feminine ways of being. I thought you were able to really pinpoint what that means for each party. I know I was having difficulty. I felt like I was bringing my masculine a lot to my relationship, and this was probably causing some issues. So what is could you kind of help the audience understand your perspective on this and how it relates to dating?
Sure. It's really about polarity. It's really about yin yang. It's about complementary ways of being. There's a lot of talk about masculine and feminine, and then people are starting to resist the words masculine and feminine because they associate that with gender. And of course, we've got so many different levels. We've got gender, we've got sexual orientation, we've got sexual preference, so we've got your biology, and so this masculine feminine thing sometimes it triggers. So I just like to say that there's just different ways of being that support each other. And for men, or the masculine is something that historically is sort of, we believe energetically, is sort of more wired to a way of being outcome focused, being the and I don't mean being manly. And this is one of these other things. You can be very much in your masculine and be present in a very feminine way. It's really about problem solving, outcome focus, resourceful, protective, provision, those sorts of things. Whereas in the feminine, we have the peacemaker, the healer, the nurturer, the person who is able to, the collaborator, not the director. And again, we have both elements. It's a continuum. So men are in their masculine, feminine, women are in their masculine, feminine. The challenge is when you are in your masculine as a woman and the man is attempting to come from a place of masculine, and those two pieces start to compete, and there's a conflict. And women will never be better being in their masculine than a man, unless the man has never developed his masculine, in which case he can be in his feminine, and he can partner up with a woman who's in her masculine, and it can be a very powerful and beautiful relationship. So it's really about knowing how that sort of shows up. Here's usually the pressure point, is that women today are very competent, capable, productive, resourceful, independent. So functioning in their masculine a lot during the day. And they yearn for a masculine as a partner. Now, in order to do that, they have to be able to step into their feminine. Sometimes they are hoping that their partner will be able to, little mixology, they have created an environment where they drop into their feminine, and many men can. but also sometimes a woman has to find her own way of being able to tap into what they call the divine feminine and connect to her, herself, spiritually, emotionally, in a free-flowing feminine way, without having to expect that it's the job of the man. But I can tell you, having spoken to, and I think you and I talked in this research I did over the last 5 years, I've talked to upwards of 1,000 women and had conversations with them, and would have those telephone conversations or text conversations, sort of to reference. And I can tell you the primary, like if there was one thing, is that they're looking for a man with healthy masculinity. And healthy masculinity is a man who can be small d dominant. And what I mean by dominant, I don't mean it in the BDSM naughty way of dominance, and role playing. I mean, sometimes that obviously can play into how people show up sexually, but I mean they're capable, they're protectors, they create a space for the woman to feel safe and cherished. There's something about their energy around them that allows a woman to feel comfortable and it brings her playfulness out. And they want that because they want to be able to turn off the have to do it part of their day. I don't have to do it. I don't want to make things happen. I don't want to have to do any more parenting. They certainly don't want to parent their partner. They certainly don't want to compete with their partner. So they're looking for men to show up in a way that has them feel that they are taken care of. And showing up and being capable is a big part of being in your masculine, because you make things happen. And when someone makes things happen for you and you're their girl, you're their partner, you're their baby girl, whatever it is, then you are feeling safe and you can step into your feminine. And that's a big thing. There's this, it's not really androgyny. It's called this amorphous energy thing where people move back and forth and no one really knows what their role is. So one of the things I'm really big on is manners. And people think, well, that's really old fashioned. But I don't look at manners as being old fashioned. I look at manners as giving us an opportunity to be mindful of our partner. So if I'm going to hold the door open for you, Andrea, I must know where you are. I must be physically aware of you are close to me. I must be aware of the speed in which you're moving. I must be attentive to you. And the two things that are required in intimacy are attention and conversation. If you can't communicate and aren't attentive, you can't have intimacy. So when you get up, you have to go to the washroom over to dinner. I get up with you. Well, that means I'm present to you. Now, what I'm doing is I'm coming up to the same level. I'm in the same, we're energetically in the same space. I'm not sitting down there going, hey, I'm pulling out my phone. Oh, you're back from the washroom.
Sorry, I was watching Kate and Leopold last night, just out of a funny movie, and he was doing that. She was getting up and he was getting up because it was old fashioned. And it just made me laugh when you said that. And she didn't know what to do with it. She was like, what are you doing? But that's interesting. I've never really kind of understood why, but that, made me remind me of that.
Well, here's the thing is that I have a daughter, Katie, and who's 30 years of age, and she was like, Dad, well, I can open the door for myself. I said, but here's what happens if you slow down a little bit and your boyfriend opens the door and then you acknowledge what he's done. What you're saying is indirectly, thank you for looking after me. And there's nothing a man wants to hear more than thank you for looking after me. I feel safe with you. I trust you. Those are they fuel man. And if I'm looking after you and you feel safe around me and you trust me to be your full self, open, then I have been given I am now. My chest is big and I'm feeling good. So sometimes the manner itself it's the response to the manner that elicits the feeling.
And I think that's so interesting because I think you're right, because we all now are quite independent, educated, we can do it ourselves. And a lot of us were brought up to, to feel that way too. I know my mom used to say, you don't need a man, blah, blah, blah. And it just starts to get in there. So then we're in this, I can do it. I don't need you to do it. But at the same time, if, like you said, we're looking to attract that masculine man and we we essentially like that feeling of being looked after or taken, being safe and feeling like, oh, that's very sweet, very thoughtful. I think you're saying exactly the right thing, where I almost think women need to be encouraged to literally just step into that feminine, and then therefore it almost allows that man to like step into his masculine, and it makes that space for him essentially. And I know this is something we spoke about, and I had to consciously like come out of that masculine role during the day of get stuff done and just step into the feminine, and it felt nice, but it was a conscious effort. One of my another client as well would always say that, like, I don't need him to do that. I'm like, yes, but you can let him, and then therefore you can feel this as part of it, and it's kind of a win-win. Of course, we know you can do it yourself, but this is also a nice part of the relationship. So it's a really conscious choice on the women's side, I think.
Well, I use the analogy of the Tesla and the supercharger. And like, women are Teslas, like they are fired up, but they have a certain range and they need to plug in.
Okay.
And, without, not only metaphorically, but sensually. I mean, the man is the fuel that they plug into that guy. A healthy relationship recharges that woman to go out and be able to go another 600 miles or 300 miles. Yes, you can plug it in yourself, and that we could go a whole different directions with that. But ultimately, that's how a man serves a woman with his masculine energy. He is a fuel source. He is energetically, so she can drop into her feminine, let go of all of the energetic outputs, receive, be loved, feel cherished, be filled up, and out she goes, raising the kids, doing the things she has to do. So it's not a need thing. It's this reciprocity that serves both people. And by receiving from a man, as a man, looking after somebody is like such a privilege. It's such a gift to look after. It's like, there's nothing better. You're my baby. I'm looking after you. You're sweet. It's like, I feel so great. And if somebody resists allowing the man to look after them, or puts the man in the situation where he doesn't feel inclined to look after because he's emasculated all the time. Classic example is a guy says, the woman says, I don't know, let's go to dinner. And he says, and it's an opportunity for him to go, I'll take you so-and-so. And she goes, nah, I don't think I want that tonight. So she created this moment for him to take some leadership, and then she shut it down. Eventually, he's not going to make a suggestion. He's just going to say, where do you want to go for dinner? She's going to say, and she's now in her masculine.
Yeah, and he's kind of taken,
but because he didn't,
essentially.
He didn't get, so when a man invites you to do something, and one of the things you complain about is that he never takes me out. It would have to be an absolutely horrible, high risk choice for me to suggest to somebody, don't go. I mean, it would be like, no, I don't think I'm going to go to an MMA fight and sit at ringside. That's just not going to work for me. But almost any, as a woman, maybe that will. But unless it's just the worst choice, go and appreciate and say, I love the fact that you decided to take me out tonight. And as those choices get more refined, then you get more celebratory. Wow. I had a great date 2 weeks ago, but tonight we rock. Like, I love going to this bar. I love this band. I love that your choice of concert was like that. So it's really about creating space so that the guy can step in and reinforcing that behavior.
Yeah, I love what you said about, almost giving yourself the ability to receive and be loved. And I think, again, because we've been brought up to get stuff done and be independent, and, maybe assuming that our worth is, associated with our achievements, that's what we need to be parading. But I mean, you might be able to speak to this from the man's perspective. Like, if a woman's just coming out, and I mean, do you want to hear about all her achievements? Like, what impresses you about a woman?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. What impressed?
I just came up with it when you were talking.
Yeah.
I know that as a woman, we're going to go, but I do this and I do this, and we're going to probably be in our masculine. So just trying to help guide what women can how they can show up?
So I can only speak from my own perspective. I love intelligence. I love conversation. I love playfulness. I love femininity in its presentation. I love somebody who's health positive, fit, and active. Those things are people who are essentially living life, embracing life.
Mm-hmm.
We only have this life, and so somebody who's living their life and not waiting for life to happen, for me is engage. For me, that's very attractive. And for me, I personally am attracted to what are called alpha feminine women, really powerful, strong women, because these are the women who are the most grateful for you providing support and space for them to be in their feminine, because they are right, their engines revving all the time. They are pushing, they are making things happen. They are running a business. They got 4 kids to get out the door. They're making it, like, they are intensely living their lives. So to support someone like that is elevating me. If somebody is just passively waiting around for you to sort of, it's hard to explain, but for me, that's just the type of person. It's more of an energy that is attractive. Now, the alpha feminine woman, which there are millions of now, have a really hard time attracting a partner because there's 4 types of men they attract. The man child. This is somebody who's quite steadily and positive and everything, and then very quickly they become the 3rd child. It's like because they're quite comfortable being the Peter Pan. There's some people who call that the Peter Pan archetype.
Yeah.
They are playful and they look after me, book my appointments, do this, feed me, whatever. And it's like, wow. And then nothing happens in the bedroom because you're thinking about, I've been parenting this guy all day and I'm sleeping. Another one is the man who is the narcissist, controlling, domineering, not dominant, domineering man who shows up very charming, and ultimately it's about winning you over, and it's all about him. And these are the people who are often very oppressive. They can be very controlling, very jealous. It's what does it mean to him that he has you as his partner, and your relationship to him is all about what meaning he gives to himself. And it's really interesting when you date a narcissist, and you leave them, they always want you back. They want you back forever. And it's not because they love you. It's because people don't leave them because it's all about them. So there's something incomplete in their schema. It's like, oh, there's a missing link here. This piece is a blind spot. She was supposed to plug in here to complete me. And then they'll win you back. Maybe you go back, and then they'll be equally abusive and difficult. The 3rd kind is the guy that you think is great, and he's just intimidated. Like, why isn't that guy talking to me? He's so sweet. We see each other. We're in the same social circle, but he just won't go to the next step, and he's intimidated by you're energetically. And then the 4th one is the one which is the sort of what I call the healthy masculine dominant grounded guy who just knows who he is and is comfortable. This is the person who celebrates your success because he is so comfortable with who he is that he wants you to be successful. He sees you. He's the person that can go to a party and you can mingle with anybody, men or women, and he can do this little circulating. And you can look over to him at 12 o'clock and it just looks at you a certain way and you know it's time to go. And you go home with your man. But at no point in the evening were you insecure or uncomfortable because you know the kind of relationship you have. You're not there to help him feel comfortable. He's not there to help you feel comfortable. You support each other. And if it's a function where you're being celebrated, he's right there, acknowledging you and quietly being so proud of your accomplishments. And he really honors you. This is the man who worships the mother of his children because he knows the contribution she makes in his life, because it allows him to be able to focus on some things and not spend the same amount of time because but he's appreciative of what she's doing to push them to keep that family unit intact. So,
well, it sounds like on a good note, we attract them all, but then therefore, because we attract them all, we just need to get better at reading through the right guys.
Yeah. I do, it does appear that it's harder for evolved women because there's more of them to find partners. There are so many incredibly amazing women out there. And I think there is an opportunity for men to see women as partners, as collaborators, and not as some alien species that they don't understand. It's so interesting. I think it's about men knowing more about how they show up in relationship and how that impedes intimacy. I think about somebody I know who was complaining about not making love as often as he used to, and he said, I said, so what would you do to initiate? Sometimes we have a big house. Sometimes I'll text her in the house and say, do you want to fool around? And I'm like, you'll send a text in the house to say, do you want to fool around? I said, how's that working for you? Yeah. And he says, not really well. And I said, she's doing chores. I'm watching a football game, or later I'm thinking, like, maybe it'll be quiet time after. I'll send her a little text. And I would say to the guy, what would happen if you just put the remote down, found out, oh, she's upstairs in the upstairs laundry room, walked in quietly, and she's folding towels. And she'd reach around and help her start folding the towels, do a load of laundry, lean into her as she's pulling the laundry out and squeeze your shoulders, or lift the laundry basket, or say, how fast do you think we can get this laundry done if I stepped in here right now? Grab the sheets, make the bed, and set the room up, and say, oh, by the way, all the sheets, and then invite her in to the bedroom. And I talk about these things because, like, I was every man. I did all of I think I did everything in a relationship that sort of let the bar be fairly low, and then so now there's an opportunity for us as men to show up differently.
Women hearing this are going, yes, can you please help men with this? That would be lovely, because that sounds amazing. It just feels very just dreamy and romantic and just very sensual and super really good. So keep up the work you're doing, as I can hear this from everybody. I want to tap on one last area that you and I spoke about, and this actually still comes back to the women and what we can do. We were talking before about sending a text, or this is always back to the texting, and this whole boosting of the validation. And you were saying how sometimes we just want to reach out, or if we don't hear back, we get annoyed, even though we didn't want to see that person anyway. And we came back to, it was almost like me deciding that I didn't want to date you, or I didn't want to see you again. And we came up with this word control. And you made an interesting comment. You said anyone who still wants to control is trying to avoid vulnerability. Was that correct? And I thought that was a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, we were talking about, you have a great date, and then you want to be able, and I can only speak from a male perspective, but so I want to ask you, well, maybe we should do this again. And the other person shuts you down and doesn't seem to be receptive. And you go home and you think, like, that was a great date. Like, what didn't I do? And then if you think about it, it's like, well, would you have actually gone on another date? And it's like, no, I actually wouldn't have. So what was that really all about? It was about, you wanted to control the flow in the narrative. Right. And you're uncomfortable with letting things happen organically and sort of saying, we weren't a match. So I can remember dates where the person was really clear and I felt rejected, and I felt I had to defend myself. Like, no, I really am a great guy. But it had nothing to do with whether or not I wanted to date them again. It's because I took everything personally. And I think, to your point, it's about being vulnerable and also not taking things personally. When you date, there is nothing in life that will lead to more rejection than online dating. There isn't. Perhaps if you're a Hollywood actor and you're bussing tables in LA and you're waiting for your big break and you go to audition after audition, you're told you're not the one. Maybe that's up there. But nowadays with technology, you can sit in front of a dating app every Sunday night as a guy, and you can begin to initiate the process of rejection very, very quickly. You could be, you can be not chosen by the person you think is great. You could not have a great text exchange. They could just disappear. Not they could not call. You know, when you call them, they could not want to go out with you. There's just multiple opportunities to feel rejected.
Yeah.
And you just don't experience that in life. When you're a kid and growing up, you don't get rejected like 10 times an evening. You get rejected to make the little league team, or you didn't, you know, when you get older, the girl didn't go to prom with you. They're manageable rejections. Online dating allows you to experience rejection every day. And if you personalize it, you can be very discouraged.
Right.
And there's nothing, it's the most impersonal experience until you participate and connect with somebody. And that's what makes it personal. So online dating is simply a platform to allow you to initiate connection with more people than you would otherwise meet in the course of your life. But if you don't have the skills to connect, if you don't have the intent, if you don't have the integrity, if you don't have and they don't reciprocate, then there's nothing personal about that. That's just that's just situational. And we take it personally. So you get a thick skin soon. And just as long as you don't get, people get very disenfranchised and discouraged. And often that's because maybe they've elevated the online platform to be something a little different than it really is. And they still, I use the philosophy that treat every woman as if she's just been introduced to you by the mother of your best friend. And you're going to treat them differently online. You're going to treat them the same way we treat them in real life. So it's not supposed to be some alternative universe. It's not like it's a Wild West with its own rules. You bring the rules. You bring your values to the process. And if somebody doesn't align with your values and rules very quickly, you're not talking to them.
And expectations. You were saying by putting it up here, all of a sudden, you're raising the bar on the expectation.
You will find your life partner because of the way in which you and another person start a journey together, not because of an online. You may have connected with them online, but the online thing is not even. I even struggle with the idea. It's called online dating. It's not online dating. It's like online visibility. It's a media platform for seeing the images and the descriptions of other people. It does no work for you. A friend of mine who's a software developer doesn't have the greatest social skills. Is like, I'm online dating. I'm not having great luck. And yeah, I'm matching up with dozens and dozens of women. And it's like, well, it's because you still have to be able to connect with people. It doesn't guarantee you a date. It's like the best it can do is create an opportunity for introduction, but you do still have to have social skills and emotional intelligence. And he somehow thought that if he just got online and matched up, there'd be bound to be somebody, because he just wasn't socializing. It's not you weren't socializing, you just didn't have any social skills. These soft skills had not been developed in your life. That's now go to some meetups, start meeting people, and then. Yeah, so
I love it. You've hit the nail on the head in terms of why it could not be working. It's more just, well, you still need to do the work. This is just, like you said, putting people in front of you. At least they're single. You know a little bit more about it. You have good conversation starters because you probably have certain things in common. You know where they live. You know all these things, but you still have to do the work. I love it.
Well, it's sort of virtual speed dating. I mean, imagine that. That old speed dating when you have 5 minutes at a table and you move around. At the end of the day, if you didn't get any phone numbers from somebody or didn't exchange, it's probably because that moment of interaction, even though there are a multitude of people circulating, there just was something that you needed to know how to do a little bit more advanced and at a higher level. So it's just, all of the online dating apps are just speed dating opportunities. So they're an opportunity for you to practice, develop your skills, or be confronted by your shortfalls and be inspired to go out and learn some new things. Get a dating coach.
I love it.
Call Andrea and ask for some help.
Yeah, exactly. Such great advice and tips. I love it. Don't take things personally. Step into your feminine. Do the 5 C's. you'll be less disappointed along that. You're qualifying someone, but it's worth putting the work in up front. And I think we all know that. I love what you just said about starting your journey together. When you step into meeting someone for the first time online or in person, it doesn't have to be the end all be all. Just think of that as the stage one of hopefully a 100-step journey that you guys get to go on together, which is really kind of sweet. I love that. Can you share with everyone the quote that you shared me yesterday about how people live their lives? I love that one. It was if you're not living your best.
Oh, I listened to a great live Instagram last week, and the line that just resonated with me was, think of the last week of your life, and if it wasn't the best week of your life, then there's something not working for you, because there's no guarantees for the next minute. And so sometimes we defer, the celebration, the positive interaction, the connection till when that, later, when I have more money, when I have a better job, when we do that trip. And we have the power to be able to live our best lives now, because it's just who we are right this instant. And it's the only thing we have is this moment. So, after I relate that to relationship, there's a line, and the line really, and it's a powerful line, and it came from my ex-wife. And she said, if you don't choose me every day, you should have left me. And, I've evolved that to say that if you don't choose your partner every day, if you choose your partner every day, there's no room to choose another. And choice and stepping into relationship and choosing you when your partner, when she's cranky, when things aren't going well, and choosing them at the end of the night as well. It's really about celebrating who they are and being aware that that's the person you chose to be with. If you do that, it is impossible for infidelity to enter into your life, because there's no room for anybody else. If I chose you at 7:30 in the morning and I have that connected moment and I get in the car, I don't care who's working in the office. You're with me all morning. And there's no room for me to be distracted and begin to think about somebody else. And if I choose you at the end of the night, but if we get so busy that we don't choose this person for 2, 3, 4 weeks, 4 months, a year, 2 years, then space opens up and there are distractions, and we can make choices that lead us to sacrificing what could have been a lifelong relationship with somebody because we didn't make those choices on a daily basis.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know someone asked me, they're like, but what if a hot guy walks down the street? Aren't you going to be like tempted? I'm like, yeah, they might be hot, but that doesn't mean they're a good person. That doesn't mean that we get along. That doesn't mean that they want me. That doesn't mean that they, enjoy having a glass of red and watching Netflix at night, but also going to comedy clubs and doing all this. And you start to realize that there are a lot of things that come together for two people. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not going to jeopardize that for a hot guy. And like you were saying before about making your best week, even if you're single, that's okay, because like we've always been saying on the summit, it's like the fulfillment, first of all, is going to come from you and you back yourself. And then the beauty behind that then is when you bring that person into the world, you're going to be attracting the most amazing people and you get to have a relationship. It's not the goal that everyone needs to meet to make you then feel fulfilled or okay in life or the best person. It's like an add-on. You get to live your best life today just by being alive and breathing, and
it's like the best hot chocolate that's so tasty, and then somebody puts a whole bunch of whipped cream at the top and it starts to overflow. The relationship is the whipped cream. If we can fill our cup up with this really tasty hot chocolate, and we know we're drinking it, and then someone goes and lathers us up with, and it's dripping and it's messy and everything, that's fun. But the hot chocolate was great without the whipped cream. It's fine without it. So you're filled up, and then it's the overflow, which is the exciting part. You're waiting for someone to take your glass from a third empty and fill it up. You're heading towards codependence. It's the fast train to codependence, because you'll need them to validate and to fill you up. And if they're not there for you at a particular moment, you won't feel adequate. You won't feel complete. And they will know that you need them in that way. And the respect will decline, because they don't want to be responsible for your happiness. They want to be contributing to your elation, but not the only reason that you're happy in a particular day.
I love that. It's a very healthy perspective in terms of why it's important for us to be filled up to our brim, and we can from our own accord, and we can get that today. And that's what this summit is for, to help you realize that that is within you today. And then therefore, when someone else brings their full cup, you both can kind of enjoy, maybe make a different mixture or something, but you both have the same to work with, and nobody feels like they're not bringing something to the table. I love it. You have so much great advice. I've loved all these tips. I know we've probably run over, but I just couldn't stop because this is just such good stuff. And I love all your tips. So how can the audience learn more about you? And, if they love what you say, because I love what you're doing out there, please let them know how they can reach out.
Well, we're going to put a free little gifty, and there'll be a little link in below. And I don't know where you're placing them in the interview. You can follow me on Instagram, practical masculinity. So #healthy. Why am I saying that? I think because it's such a healthy conversation right now. #practical masculinity. And then the website is practical-masculinity.com. And love what you're doing. It's funny that at this point in my life, having been a business guy for so many years, I'm really passionate about relationships and about people finding their purpose and making a difference in the life of their partner and themselves. And you said something earlier, which is really about self-love. I mean, feeling worthy yourself, that you have something to offer the world, and feeling good about your life and making healthy decisions sets you up for being able to have really powerful, positive relationships. And your expectation of relationship will change the healthier you are, and the more you are, connected to your vision. And men need a purpose, and women need a vision. And if you are aligned with your vision, relationships are the bonus. They're not the essential.
Yeah, it definitely made me feel, once I realized that fact, and that a lot of the validation didn't have to come from my partner. I can, by backing myself, I went from feeling like I was in a car, but I didn't have a hold of the steering wheel. And now I feel like I have a hold of the steering wheel and I'm driving it, which is perfect, just because then I feel like I can handle any situation that comes along. It doesn't feel like I'm powerless or out of control. And it's really nice, and it definitely falls more into the abundance space. So thank you for sharing your gift. I super appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show, and hope you enjoyed this as much as I have, because I always learn something new from Kevin every time I speak to him. And I love what you're doing. Thank you so much. I know the women are all thanking you out there for helping the men that you can and want to be helped. And until then, we just keep doing what we're doing and being awesome.
I loved our conversation. Take care.
Thank you.